Before GPS and air-conditioned cabs, these machines did it all, and they're still running today. Out here in the heart of the Midwest, where dawn breaks over endless cornfields, these tractors weren't just tools, they were lifelines. From the green hum of a John Deere to the red heartbeat of a Farmall, they plowed, planted, and carried generations through hard winters and golden harvests. 7 legends. 7 stories of grit, diesel, and devotion, still alive beneath the same wide American sky. Oliver 1650. Some tractors made their mark with noise and power, others earned their place through quiet strength. The Oliver 1650, built from 1964 to 1969 in Charles City, Iowa, belonged to the latter kind. It wasn't the loudest, nor the biggest, but ask any farmer from Ohio or Indiana, and they'll tell you it was one of the most beloved machines ever to roll off a Midwestern line. The 1650 carried a 6-cylinder diesel engine with 265 cubic inches, producing around 70 horsepower, smooth, balanced, and steady. It didn't shake, didn't roar, it simply worked. There was a sense of composure about it, a quiet confidence that matched the people who drove it. On a cool autumn morning, you could hear it long before you saw it, that deep hum, gentle but sure, threading through the fog like a familiar tune. It was a tractor for those who didn't need to be seen, only heard in the steady rhythm of their work. The seat sat just high enough to watch the field stretch ahead, rows of corn bending in the breeze, dew still clinging to the leaves. The exhaust curled upward in slow spirals as the 1650 moved through the furrows, not hurrying, not dragging, just keeping pace with the heartbeat of the land. Oliver had built tractors for generations, but this one felt different. It had refinement, and attention to detail that made it feel almost personal. The steering was easy, the hydraulics responsive, the ride comfortable enough to make long days feel shorter. You could spend 12 hours behind that wheel and still climb down with a kind of quiet satisfaction, knowing you'd spent the day in good company. Many of those tractors are still running across the Midwest today. You'll find them on small family farms, their green paint faded, decals worn to ghosts, yet their engines still start with that same gentle thrum. Some are restored to perfection for parades and shows, others are kept in working clothes, still pulling, still earning their keep. The Oliver 1650 never tried to impress anyone. It didn't have to. It proved itself year after year, in rain, in dust, in silence. Not the loudest in the field, but perhaps the most loved. And sometimes, that quiet kind of reliability is what endures the longest, echoing softly through the years like the hum of an old engine still turning beneath a pale Midwestern sky. Allis-Chalmers WD-45. Then came a blaze of orange across the hills of Wisconsin, bright enough to catch the morning sun from miles away. The Allis-Chalmers WD-45, built from 1953 to 1957, wasn't just another machine. It was a bold statement in color and character. You could spot it from half a mile down the road, that brilliant orange frame glinting like a sunrise over hayfields heavy with dew. Allis-Chalmers had been building solid tractors for years, but the WD-45 was something special. It was the first in their line to offer true power steering, a godsend on long days when turning the wheel felt like wrestling a bear. Under the hood sat a 4-cylinder engine, 226 cubic inches, delivering just over 40 horsepower on gasoline and even more on LP gas. It wasn't the biggest tractor in the shed, but it was one of the strongest. Farmers loved how easily it started, how smooth it ran, and how it pulled through clay and snow alike without complaint. In the dairy country of Wisconsin and the rolling fields of Minnesota, that orange machine became part of the landscape. Its steady rhythm carried through the cool mornings, the sound deep and even, a comforting throb you could feel in your chest. On harvest days, you'd see it hitched to wagons stacked high with hay, the driver wiping sweat from his brow, the WD-45 humming patiently beneath him. There was pride in that paint. Even after years of work, when the color had dulled to a dusty pumpkin tone, it still turned heads. Kids grew up with that color burned into memory, orange against blue sky, the scent of cut grass, the chatter of swallows nesting in the rafters. It wasn't just a tractor, it was part of the family photograph, the background of a life well lived. And like all good things made in that era, many WD-45s are still running. Some sit behind barns, waiting for their turn at a parade or a local fair. Others are still earning their keep, pulling mowers or plows like they did 70 years ago. The paint may fade, the metal may rust, but the heartbeat remains the same. That bright orange WD-45 stood out like the sunrise over the hayfield, and for those who knew its sound, it always will. Farmall Super M. The late 1930s and early 1940s were hard years across the Midwest. Dust still lingered in the corners of memory, and every acre of land mattered. Out of that struggle came something dependable, painted in the color of courage, the Farmall Super M. Built by International Harvester in Rock Island, Illinois, it rolled out of the factory with a deep red shine that caught the morning sun like a promise. Between 1939 and 1954, thousands of them found their way to the rolling fields of Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. It sold for only a few $1,000s, but it could do the work of horses many times over, and in the years after the war, that mattered more than anything. Under its sturdy frame beat a 4-cylinder gasoline engine with 264 cubic inches of heart, good for roughly 50 horsepower. On paper, it wasn't extraordinary. But out in the field, with the plow biting the soil and the air thick with the smell of fresh earth, the Super M was something else. It was steady, patient, uncomplaining. The kind of machine that would run all day and still ask for more. You could fix most of it with a wrench, a hammer, and a bit of grit. Every farmer appreciated that. When folks talk about those years, they don't mention numbers. They talk about the way that Red Hood gleamed in the sunlight as it rolled across the furrows. The way it hummed, low and even, a rhythm that matched the pulse of the man on the seat. They talk about spring mornings when the frost still clung to the grass and the Super M's exhaust drew lazy trails into the blue. About afternoons when a son would hand his father a canteen of water, and both would lean against the rear tire, sharing silence and the smell of gasoline and dust. In the small towns of Ohio and across the heartland, that tractor wasn't just a tool, it was part of the family. It carried hay, pulled wagons, hauled grain to the elevator, and stood as tall as the people who owned it. As the decades passed, the paint faded to a softer red, but the sound of its engine still brings people back to simpler times. You can find one today sitting behind a barn, a little rust around the fenders, a few oil stains on the concrete. Someone might climb up, turn the key, and listen as it starts without hesitation, like an old friend clearing his throat. The Farmall Super M was never about luxury or size. It was about trust, the kind that forms when steel meets soil and season meets season. Out in the wide fields of the Midwest, its spirit still lingers. The red may have faded, but the memories never did. Massey Ferguson 135. Through the 1960s, farms were changing once again. Machinery was getting sleeker, smarter, more efficient. Yet in the midst of that mechanical progress came a tractor that carried itself with quiet dignity, the Massey Ferguson 135. Built between 1964 and 1975, it didn't boast great size or power, but something far more enduring, grace, reliability, and a kind of humble charm that farmers came to love. It came from Coventry, England, but its heart belonged to the fields of Kentucky, Indiana, and the American Midwest. Its price was fair, its frame small and sturdy, and under that red and gray hood lay a 3-cylinder Perkins diesel engine with 152 cubic inches, producing about 45 gentle, honest horsepower. It purred instead of roared, smooth as a song on a summer evening. It was the kind of machine you could start before sunrise, let idle while you tied your boots, and it would still be there, steady, waiting. Farmers called it the gentleman farmer, and you could see why. The controls were simple, the steering light, the seat comfortable enough for long days between fence lines. It was nimble in the barnyard, patient in the pasture, and polite in the field. Whether pulling a small plow or mowing the edges of a hayfield, the 135 never complained. It just went about its work with quiet confidence. Across Ohio in the mid-1960s, you'd see them moving through golden light, small clouds of dust rising behind. The smell of diesel mixed with cut grass, the hum of the Perkins engine low and smooth like a lullaby. Fathers taught sons how to feather the clutch, wives used it to haul feed and gather bales. There was something reassuring about its rhythm, calm, dependable, unhurried. Even now, half a century later, you can still find the 135 working the back corners of family farms, the paint faded but the spirit untouched. A new coat of polish can improve its loyalty, because loyalty was built into every bolt. Mechanics shake their heads at how rarely they fail. Collectors call them treasures. But to the men and women who remember, it's simply the little gray and red that just won't quit. When you see one rolling down a dirt lane in the evening sun, it feels like time itself slowing down, a quiet reminder that good design, like good character, never goes out of style. Ford 8N. The years rolled on, and farms grew larger, roads longer, towns busier, yet the red tractors of the Midwest still stood proud under the sun. After the Farmall had carved its name into the soil, another workhorse arrived, one built for every man, every acre, every small dream that could fit inside a fence line. It was the Ford 8N, and for many families, it was the first tractor they ever called their own. It came right after the war, when young men came home, married their sweethearts, and set out to build something lasting. From 1947 to 1952, Ford's plant in Dearborn, Michigan, sent hundreds of thousands of these gray and blue machines rolling onto gravel roads and pastures. They sold for around $1,400, just enough to make ownership possible for the small farmer, the dairyman, or the man who worked his field after a factory shift. You could drive down a rural road in Iowa or Ohio and see one parked in nearly every yard, its paint scuffed, its tires muddy, its story still being written. Under the hood was a four-cylinder engine, 119 cubic inches, giving 27 honest horsepower. It wasn't built for show. It was built for work: plowing, mowing, raking, hauling. The controls were simple enough that a boy could learn to drive before he learned to shave. And most did. There's a certain memory shared across the Midwest, the smell of gasoline in summer air, a father's steady hand guiding a nervous grip on the clutch, the gentle jolt as the 8N lurched forward and found its rhythm. That was the moment a kid stopped being just a kid and became part of the farm. The Ford 8N had a warmth to it, even in metal. Its blue-gray hood caught the morning light like tin warmed by the sun. The sound of its small engine echoed softly between barns, the rhythm of work and life intertwined. When the chores were done, the tractor rested beside the shed, cooling with a ticking sound that every farm family could recognize in their sleep. Dogs lay nearby, children played in the dust, and somewhere a radio hummed out of a kitchen window, Hank Williams or Patsy Cline fading into the dusk. Today, you can still find them, maybe behind a red barn, maybe in a field where the weeds have grown high. And when someone turns the key and hears that familiar sputter come alive again, something in the heart stirs. The Ford 8N was never fancy, never grand. It was the everyman's tractor, the working man's companion, a bridge between generations. If you learn to drive a tractor, chances are it was a blue and gray 8N, and that sound, that feeling, will never quite leave you. John Deere 4020. The year was 1964. America was changing fast, highways pushing west, factories humming, towns growing in every direction. But across the heart of the Midwest, life still followed the slow rhythm of the seasons, the soil turning black in spring, the scent of diesel at dawn, the quiet pride of work well done. In Waterloo, Iowa, John Deere released a machine that would come to define a generation, the Model 4020. It sold for around $10,000 when new, a heavy sum back then, but farmers knew quality when they saw it. More than 180,000 of them were built through the 1960s, and even today, a clean one at auction can bring $20,000 or $25,000. From Iowa to Illinois, from Minnesota down into Ohio, the 4020 became as common as the barn cat or the windmill on the hill, a symbol of faith and hard work, and in the green and yellow colors that stood for honesty and endurance. Beneath that long hood was a 6-cylinder, 404 cubic inch diesel engine pushing around 95 horsepower. It was powerful, yes, but what made it special was how it felt: the smooth shift of the powershift transmission, the firm grip of its twin disc brakes, the ease of starting even when the temperature dropped below zero. It was a tractor that didn't complain. It just worked, steady and sure, like the people who drove it. Many still remember the sound. That slow, rolling idle before sunrise. The faint white puff of exhaust drifting into the frozen air. A boy standing by the barn door, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug, watching his father climb into the seat. The lights flick on, the tires crunch through the snow, and the John Deere rolls out into the morning, a green shadow moving through a world still half asleep. Decades later, those memories linger like the smell of cut hay in July. Some of these tractors have been repainted, others wear their rust with pride, but nearly all of them still run. They're reminders of a time when things were built to last, when trust was earned in metal and oil, not software and screens. The John Deere 4020 wasn't just a machine. It was the heartbeat of the Midwest, strong, patient, and faithful to the land. And even now, half a century later, you can still find one idling softly in a green shed at dawn. Case 930. Out on the wide, windswept plains, where you could see the horizon stretch forever, a new kind of tractor appeared, tall, proud, and built for distance. The Case 930 Comfort King, made from 1960 to 1969 in Racine, Wisconsin, was everything its name promised: power, comfort, and the steady confidence of a machine that could see clear across the world it worked. It was the sort of tractor you noticed from afar: its high stance, its white cab and burnt orange hood shining under the Nebraska sun. Priced around $10,000 new, it stood among the most capable field tractors of its day. Beneath that bold frame was a 6-cylinder diesel engine, 401 cubic inches, with close to 85 horsepower and torque enough to pull heavy plows through stubborn prairie soil. It didn't rush, it rolled, deliberate and sure, like the plains themselves. Farmers called it the King of the Plains for good reason. The seat sat higher than most, giving a view that made a man feel almost royal. Miles of wheat swaying, fence posts blurring past, the wind running wild across open country. Case engineers gave it real comfort too: better suspension, a raised platform, easier steering. After years of hunching over steel and dust, farmers finally had a tractor that seemed to care for their backs. You could spot them all across Kansas and Nebraska, engines drumming steady under the big sky. There was something unforgettable about the way the 930 moved, not loud, but commanding, the deep diesel tone cutting through the wind. On long days, the sun beat down and the smell of hot oil filled the air, yet the Comfort King kept going. A farmer might rest his hand on the fender for balance, feeling the vibration, knowing the machine beneath him was as faithful as the land itself. Decades later, you still see them at field shows and on back roads, paint dulled but proud. Some wear new tires, some the original cracked rubber. But when that engine starts, the sound takes old-timers straight back to mornings when the air was cool and the fields endless. They called it the Comfort King, and it earned that name. 7 tractors, 7 stories written in steel and soil. The John Deere's green, the Farmall's red, the Ford's gray-blue, the Allis' sunrise orange, the Massey's polished silver, the Oliver's soft green, and the Case's proud white and orange, each one a chapter in the great book of the Midwest. If you grew up here, you can still hear them, the distant hum at dawn, the echo of engines that built a nation's harvest. Maybe your father drove one. Maybe you did. And if these memories still stir in you, share them, keep them alive, pass them on. Because the story of these tractors is the story of the people who loved them, steady, humble, and built to last. Thank you for riding along this dusty road of memory. If these tales brought a smile or a memory of home, subscribe, share your story, and help keep the heartbeat of the Midwest alive, one old engine at a time.